What would happen if we focused on what people do right versus fixating on what others do wrong? That powerful question from Donald Clifton, founder of the Strengths Movement, perfectly sets the stage for today's conversation. I'm Ryan Kay, and this is The Future of Work with AI, where we explore how leaders are navigating the biggest workplace transformation in decades. Today, I'm joined by JoDee Curtis, a former CPA turned HR powerhouse who's built a 16-person consulting firm helping organizations create cultures where people actually want to work. JoDee's got 5 books under her belt, with her latest Joy at Work When Women Lead dropping July 29th. But here's what makes this conversation fascinating. We're living through what might be the highest levels of workplace fear and anxiety since COVID, maybe even worse. Companies are scrambling with AI adoption, employees are questioning everything, and most leaders are using fear-based motivation when what people desperately need is clarity, recognition, and yes, joy. JoDee's going to share why most HR people have it backwards when it comes to business strategy, the real reason employees don't use AI, hint, it's not what you think, and her game-changing approach to creating workplace cultures that actually retain top talent. Plus, we'll dive into her unexpected pickleball team building strategy and why she believes the future belongs to leaders who can find joy in their people's success, even when they leave for better opportunities. Ready to challenge everything you think you know about workplace happiness and AI adoption? Let's dive in. Well, cool. Well, let's jump in and kind of talk through this. I think you have an interesting topic of joy in the workplace, especially because I believe right now we are most likely the highest level of fear and anxiety definitely since COVID. And I actually think we're going to get past that. I think it will be worse than COVID, which is saying a
Oh,
lot.
really? Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, the world's changing and it's
Yeah,
changing fast, and there's a lot of hype about what it looks like and very little clarity around what it will actually be like.
right, right,
That's not a great recipe.
right. True,
Like, I
true.
pretty much interview change management people all day long right now, especially the last few weeks, a lot of change management people, and it's like, oh yeah, like demand for change management
Yeah,
is extremely high because change is coming.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
yeah, so let's just, clearly we'll throw bumpers on the beginning and end of this, so we don't need to worry about that stuff. But sorry. Let's jump right in.
Yeah.
So how do you get into HR? Is this do you study it in college and you're like, man, I just want to be an HR person, or is this an accidental pathway?
Well, interesting story on that. I had an interest in HR, but I actually went to college with a major in accounting. And I took a couple of HR classes, but they were all about labor unions, and I was bored out of my mind. So I dropped that as the second major, got my degree in accounting, worked in public accounting for 21 years. But the first 9, I was a practicing auditor. And during that time, I kept raising my hand to say, I'd love to be on the recruiting team, or I'd love to do some training, or I'd love, so on and so forth. So I kept dipping my toes in that HR space. And then at one point, I had an opportunity to move into an HR role. I still had some other internal responsibilities and then led up to be a HR manager and then an HR director and a VP of HR. So although I still keep my CPA license, I'm a true HR person at heart.
And that's interesting because a lot of accountants end up migrating. It's like the more extroverted accountants.
Right.
And usually it is a kind of an accidental glide in. Usually it's through payroll. It's like, well, now that I'm doing the payroll taxes, all of a sudden now I need to people are asking me about benefits because I'm the one that manages that
Right.
accidentally because we don't
Right.
have an HR person. And you usually it quickly divides out.
Right.
The
Uh,
accountants who have no desire to be the people are like,
right.
no, this is not my job. Like, I do not want to be the person you're crying to.
That's
Or
right.
the ones that do want it are like, oh, this is so much better than debits and credits and reconciliations. And they make the leap over. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of I always like to call it accidental HR people, which
Right.
term is like over 50% are like people who didn't
Oh,
get a degree in
yes.
HR. They got their SPHR or PHR, certification, but this wasn't where they started. And now
Right.
they're there, right?
Right.
So you jumped
Very
into that.
common.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, super common because I mean there's not there are HR degrees. You can go get a degree, but more than half of everybody don't have one.
Right. Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
not sure going back to like what they studied. I know I took the SPHR. I studied accounting in college too. So
Oh,
I
you
studied
did?
accounting. Stayed
Oh,
accounting, switched to an MBA in the master's program because I was like, oh, mergers and acquisitions and international, blah, blah, blah. Like so boring. Like got my MBA, quit my job, and went into web marketing. And then
yeah.
built some HR tech software. Somebody asked me to build an ATS system. And so
Nice.
my programmer, my part-time mom programmer that was with me, we built an ATS and scaled it up. And like, I know way too much about recruiting and HR. That was not my
Mm,
goal, like
right.
in life ever.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting that we all, because it is so broad,
Hmm.
like every company that has people have HR problems.
Right. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And so you left doing that for an individual organization and now you do much more consulting. How has that changed things?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I consider myself a business person who focuses on HR and not just an HR person. And that is interesting. Even when I look at the people on my own team, a lot of them majored in college in communications or sociology or English, and they didn't get a business background first. So I feel like it really helps me in working with my clients where I'm not, people think of HR people as being all about the people, but I really have a mindset of it's about the business, and our people are a huge part of that, right? So I think although I have no interest in working in accounting anymore, it bodes me well in the HR role.
Well, yeah, and accounting is like the kind of like the underlying language of business. Like if you
Right,
can understand somebody's books, but accountants struggle with the same thing of
right,
like kind of very zoomed in on the numbers and the financials and not understanding the people. Like
exactly.
business is like as much about psychology as it is about math. The
Right,
psychology is generally not a strength of accountants.
right.
Understanding the biases and the irrationality of how humans act at work and like
Yeah,
why humans might not like I always love to when you do a change management thing, or especially if there's private equity involved, and you're like, you don't have a spot in this spreadsheet for psychology. And so you guys decided this spreadsheet said this change was going to equal X, and then it doesn't, and you're surprised that you decided all of humans were utterly logical,
right,
that it would
right.
work exactly the way your spreadsheet said it would work, and you didn't take into effect like psychology and fear and scarcity and like pushing back and like friction and all these things that are not in a spreadsheet.
Exactly. And I think the opposite is true too, that HR people aren't always thinking about the costs or the return on investment or the budget or some of the other constraints that HR has to be worried about as well.
Oh, 100% holistic. I mean, the bigger a business gets, the more siloed it is.
Yeah.
And even on a team of 5 or 10 people who each have their own role, they can get siloed really fast. And your leader then has to bridge all of these areas to bring everybody in line. And the IT person is zoomed in on their part, and
Right.
finance is zoomed in, and HR is zoomed in. And like, yeah, 100% the number one thing you can do is to understand broad context,
Mhm.
because then everybody else makes sense to you.
Right.
You can at least have empathy. Like it's the what is it? Seek first to understand, then to be understood kind of
Right.
concept. It's really hard to understand people if you don't get where they're coming from.
Exactly. Yeah.
How does that kind of as we pivot into that? Like I do from a HR person standpoint, I'm going to put some words in your mouth here. Like if you want to be great at HR, you might need to expand your context of the business side and the accounting side,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I think some HR people miss the boat on that and not always understanding how the business operates, how the business makes money, how the business is profitable or not, and what drives some of those things. But we in HR can be much better HR business partners to people in the organization when we understand what they're focused on as well too.
Yeah, and I would say that's even more important the farther away those people are from HR and what you do. Like sales is a great example. Like you couldn't
Exactly.
get two people that are more different than a
Right.
salesperson and an HR person, right? Just like the way they're compensated, the way they're paid, their risk aversion. Like one's paid per hour, one's heavily compensated on results. Like one is viewed generally as this cost center, one is viewed as this revenue driver. Like
Right.
everything about that, I would bet the average HR person, if you ask them who are some of their most frustrating employees, it'll be sales reps.
Oh yeah.
Like the hardest time for them to see eye to eye.
Right.
Eh,
Maybe the accountants would come in second, but
uh-huh.
salespeople would be number one.
Yeah.
So,
Their brains are wired different. Their roles are set different. It's like they speak a completely different language, right?
right.
So
Right.
how does that, let's pivot into your book. So Joy at Work. Like what's the premise of that of like, yeah, what's the premise of who is written to and kind of what some of those core things are?
Yeah, so I think in general about thinking about joy at work, I think a lot of people haven't been even thought about finding joy at work. You know, they look at work as a place to go and to leave at the end of the day and to get a job done or to accomplish tasks and don't think about it as a place where I can find joy in what I'm doing, or I can use my strengths and I can feel accomplished and be recognized, and all those things that are important for us to understand or to feel about the workforce if we're going to have any sort of loyalty or retention at all based on those things. So just saying the words joy and work in the same sentence, even, I think is a stretch for some people, or they think like, oh, that's so fluffy, right? Like joy and work, we're here to dig ditches or build cars or build roads. You know, I'm not worried about people finding joy, but the ones who do, and even have an expectation that they will and should find joy at work, I think are going to be your best performers. So.
And do you think that that's a thing from a employer standpoint? They're not viewing that as part of their job to create that, or do you believe it's like from the employee standpoint of like this is work, it's not supposed to be? I think I'm pretty sure I've heard that. This is work, it's not supposed to be fun. I wouldn't get paid if it was fun.
Right, right, right. I think it comes from both sides, and I think it's something that definitely has evolved over the years. You know, if you go way back to the 40s and the 50s, definitely we went to work to get a paycheck, right? To provide for our families, to live a full life. And so there wasn't any expectation on either part that an employer was supposed to create a culture where people could thrive and look forward to going there. That's sort of my baseline. I think what I find joy in doing and what you find joy in doing might be completely different things. But my baseline question to people is always, do you look forward to going to work? On most days, right? We all have our moments, we all have our bad days, but if we can look forward to going to work, we're going to go with that expectation that, you know, I want to be surrounded by people that I enjoy being with and that I respect and that I trust. And the same for employers to say, I want to provide a culture where people can thrive and learn and grow. Now, that doesn't mean as an employer, I have to play games all day or not have productive people. I think we can create cultures and environments where we both win, the employees and the employers win with that.
100%. And I think I mean, clearly there's so many things going against it.
Right.
Right? I mean, like if you think back to when you were in college, right? You think back if you went to college and you were in college, like we're way too young. We have so little context. At that point in your life, your potential things you could do are generally limited to people who've influenced you. Because you
Right.
need to be able to see yourself in doing the role. It might be a little easier with YouTube and some of that stuff today, but still, like you're making this big decision that's sending you down the track
Right.
that becomes very hard to pivot from when you're like, so I don't like accounting. It's not, this
Right.
is not feeding my soul. I don't
Right.
enjoy it, but every day that I progress along adulthood, I have a house and I have a mortgage and I have a car payment, and I have a kid, and like it becomes harder and harder to get off that track onto a new one.
Right.
So then
Right.
you're stuck in a role that you may not love and may not thrive in. And then you're like at a company, and we've been sold this like big companies equal stability and security, but big companies tend to run like command and control.
Right.
Like do what you're told. We rely, the more people you have doing something, the more we rely on you doing your job,
Right.
not questioning, not pushing back, not being creative. We rely on you doing your job, which then takes away some of that piece. And then,
Hmm.
heaven forbid, we start making big decisions in spreadsheets
Right.
about how things will work. Like it's kind of tuned for more likely to not have joy,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the reason why I wrote my first book called Joy Powered was, well, the real reason was because I wanted to get more speaking engagements, honestly. But when I thought about what do I know about that people could learn from me on, it was that I felt like I talked to so many people who maybe had worked in a role for 2 years or 20 years or 40 years and then found themselves looking for something else and said, well, I wasn't that happy anyway. Or I didn't look forward to work, or it wasn't a good culture. And so I would always ask them, why did you stay? It's gonna be my own career wasn't perfect at every stop, but I do feel like for the most part, when I found I wasn't looking forward to going to work, I did something about it, right? And sometimes that was doing something different internally when I switched from accounting to HR, and sometimes it was leaving the organization and doing something different. But the people who settle for a job, maybe because they know it's considered to be a good company, or they have really good benefits, or they're making a salary they don't think they can make somewhere else, just settle for that and lower their expectations on places to work. So,
Yeah, I think there's a saying, I'm trying to get this quote right. It's something like it's almost like we love known pain over unknown happiness.
oh,
Like
exactly.
when you really think about what the difference is, there it is not, because that question you would hear a lot of people say, I don't understand. You're unhappy. Why do you not do something different? And the
Right.
question is, what do you fear more? Do
Yeah.
you fear being unhappy? But that's a known. You know what
Mhm.
that's like. You know how to sit in that situation. Or do you fear the unknown? It could be happy, it could be sad. I could, like, hey, I don't like working here, but I know what it is. I don't like working here, but I'm good at it. I don't like working here, but it's consistent, it's
Right.
predictable. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people index predictability
Yes.
over joy.
Yes. Oh,
Joy means
100%.
uncertainty and risk and change.
Right. It's
Could
kind
they-
of I've heard it said in I think the same point, but maybe a little bit different words, is that we talk about how most people fear change, but what they really fear is loss, that loss of comfort, that loss of stability, that loss of consistency. And I think that's a interesting way to look at change too, is what are you losing? So and not
yeah.
what might you gain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a difference between being unhappy and safe
Mhm.
and being unsafe. And for a lot of, I think it's probably built into our DNA. It's probably very much from the tribal kind of concept. You're in a tribe, you may not like it, but being alone,
Right.
we evolved to say that's scary. The
Yes.
person who leaves the safety of the tribe gets eaten by a bear, right? Like starves to death. Like we as like a tribal species back in that day couldn't survive alone. And I
Mhm.
think it brings up a lot of that stuff. It's, you take somebody who's more entrepreneurial and they're like, no, 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 I'm excited by uncertainty. I'm excited by those things. And I've probably built up my own internal confidence in dealing with uncertainty.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
because if you say, I like chaos, I like uncertainty, I like new things, you're probably really saying, I'm confident in my ability to solve for it.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that's not exactly something we teach.
Right. Right. Right.
So, from an employer standpoint, like, what does joy mean? Like, because that is kind of a little bit of a woo woo word, right? The
Yeah.
like, you probably struggle a little bit in some circles to be like, joy is not a word that I'd describe a culture. What I don't even know what that's like.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll start by telling you what I think joy is not, and that is joy is not just being happy. And I think we spent a lot of years, and employers spent a lot of years in the workforce trying to make people happy. When we had the whole advent of bringing foosball tables and ping pong tables and snacks and yoga and those types of things into the workforce. Now, there's nothing wrong with those, and they may be great for your people, but they're temporary happiness, right? They're, let's have free pizza on Friday. And so people love free pizza on Friday, but then they, an hour later, they're like, what's next? Where's the ice cream? Where's the
Right.
snack bar? Where's the coffee bar? Right. But joy really being an internal feeling of being being proud, being recognized, feeling good at the end of the day about what you've accomplished, and by spending the majority of your day using your strengths, right? That we know when we use our strengths, and strengths can be defined as the Gallup's Clifton Strengths Assessment tool that gives us language around that. But even just for people to think about, what is it that I do best? And am I spending the bulk of my day doing that? Or am I spending the bulk of my day doing things that drain me and take away my energy? So it's understanding what are those things and how can I do more of them.
Yeah. And I would imagine that that's at that base heavily individualized, right?
Oh, right,
Like,
right.
this is an individual thing where we're looking, and a lot of employers' pushback would then be like, hey, we can't build a company of us making every single person, giving everybody what they want.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Like, I know
yes.
back when I was at Applicant Pro, so we had this. I would get my employees to stack rank their priorities, and so
Ah,
we were, when I left, 280 employees, 80% female, mostly working mom, had never been in tech, and yet they're now at this ATS company, and most of them hadn't done the jobs that they came into customer support, but now they're in sales or success or product management or whatever the case may be. Um, and clearly, same thing. I'd be like, I can't give everybody what they want. I can't give everybody everything they want. But how about we start with creating some priorities?
Right.
And stack ranking is really important for that. Going, I want you to get out of shoe. I did it with the whole company, and I did it like every quarter, and I do it with teams because as your life changes, right? You go from being, a part-time working mom to a single mom who's now the breadwinner. Your life just changed. Your kids
Right.
go from being, in home in diapers to an elementary school. Now they're gone for the whole day. Things changed. And so that stack ranking of, do you care about, career, like your career growth? Do you care about control of your schedule? Do you care about like how many hours you work? Do you care about benefits? Like you need to rank these. And it worked really well because it's like, imagine that you're your kids at Christmas time. They don't get everything on the list. So you make them stack rank what
Right.
Santa's going to bring them. You
Right.
force prioritization. And that would start to get a concept of like, hey, I think the top third I could probably make happen. And the middle
Mhm.
third is like a maybe. And the bottom third, you should assume you can't get it because you can't have everything.
Right.
And that ranking gave a model for, okay, now I can see what the mix is like on my support team or on my sales team, both individually and as a group. Because if everybody cared about full flexibility of hours, we had a problem.
Right.
Like we wouldn't have coverage. And so I
Mhm.
do think there are like, I think that we can't give everybody everything is generally a employer cop out for, this sounds like it's a pain. It's going to be a lot of work
Yeah.
and it's going to require us to make some changes.
Right.
And so it's easier to be like, no, this is a job.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. And you're right. No matter how good we are at this, I love the ranking priority idea, by the way. We can't make everybody happy all the time, but we can when we have a one-on-one with them and we think about having an annual evaluation or talk about having a promotion, we can look at things like their strengths or their disc profile or their Myers-Briggs or colors or whatever it is, and think what's driving this person or what is most important or what are their priorities and how can I include those in the conversation, right? To make it more personal and to have a better understanding of who they are as a person. But that's hard. If you have 10, 20 people reporting to you, it's hard. So,
yeah, I mean, but you gotta, what's the quote? Choose your hard.
yes,
Dealing with unhappy employees is also hard.
right.
Like dealing with employees that spend the majority of their day not in their sweet spot, not
Yeah,
in their strength, not in what they enjoy doing, is
yeah,
also hard. It's
right.
just seems to be, it's the short-sighted hard.
Hmm.
I don't have to be proactive. I instead am reacting to that hard. And that really is like every manager who says, I wish my employees were more proactive instead of
Yes.
reactive. Well, number one, that's a fallacy because we as a species are a reactionary species. Like the cavemen didn't run marathons. They stored their energy and waited for a lion to chase them, right?
Yes.
But every manager who complains that their employees are reactive, not proactive, if you ask this question about one on ones and how much you know about employees, and are you proactively figuring out whether there's going to be a problem or are you reacting to the problems, they'll fall into the same trap and be like, well, I'm probably, if I'm being honest, super reactive.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
well, I bet your employees wish you were more proactive at creating the environment, at saying good job. Because I
Right.
bet, and maybe we can pivot on this, like, I bet that it's not just that I want to be in my sweet spot. I bet that it's also I want to be recognized for the things that I'm great at, that I did it, that it worked. Like, there's probably actually a negative correlation there of like, I'm doing what I'm great, I'm a great problem solver, but nobody recognizes it. Might actually be more offensive than
Right.
I'm doing what I hate and I'm not recognized for it.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. I think that I always tell people I think the key to life inside of work and outside of work is to set clear expectations, right? If you want people to be proactive, tell them what you're looking for. What do you want them to be proactive about specifically? Or what do they want to be recognized for? Now that one, you know, we we should all be practicing recognition and how we can give that more often. But the more we ask questions and to find out what those things really mean, the better we can all be at doing them. So,
100%.
yeah.
I always like I actually am the opposite. I believe expecting people to be proactive is setting everybody up for unhappiness. So for
Ah,
me, I just take that one step further and go, and then I'm going to create something that causes them to react. So for
ah,
instance, like I wish my sales reps would post on LinkedIn more. Okay. We can take that next level and go, well, do they understand that this is part of their job? 100%. Like we've taught it. Like did we make sure they had the tools and the access they needed to do it? Yes, they have that. Okay, so if they're not doing it, then are we measuring it? Like, do we
mhm,
have a measurement that says every week we have a scorecard that shows
right.
how many times they posted? Oh, all of a sudden they are now reacting to the scorecard. Cool.
Mm,
Now it's no longer a proactive activity. It's a, oh man, I got to cram for my
mm,
tests this week. And
right,
that reactivity, all the way up to like, did I create an automation that sends them an email every day that reminds them? Now they're reacting to an email from their boss. That last step, I think, yeah, it's a pragmatism thing. It's the we're not supposed to be raising these children. They should be responsible enough to do it on their own. Yet pragmatically, if you create a scorecard and you make sure you bring it up every time and you both you create transparency, everybody sees how they're doing in front of the crowd and we say good job for those that do it, all of a
yes,
sudden it comes up, but there's some weird parent. It goes back to the like, I think it's a fallacy to say you have a family environment. You have a team, right?
oh,
You have a team. You're
yeah,
not raising these people. It's not a
right,
family. You're not their parent. You're 100% right. But
right,
pragmatically, on a team,
yeah,
the coach pulls you out of the game if you're not doing what you're told, and he calls the plays.
mhm,
And there's a scoreboard and a scorecard, and you review it. And a coach very much does, maybe you don't want to call it micromanage, but
uh-huh.
100% creates reactionary situations.
Yeah, yeah. I love your comment about the family. That's something I've been talking about for years. That when I see a company that says, we're a family environment or we're like a family, and I think, and I have a great family, but families can be ugly and families can be messy and families can,
That's always my first question. I'm like, hang on a second, there's lots of different types of families. So are you a dysfunctional family? Are you a
right,
chaotic family? Is this like a domestic dispute kind of family? And that
right,
usually
right,
gets a laugh, but the challenge is you don't fire your brother
right,
and you don't trade your uncle.
right,
And like, but on teams, LeBron plays for our team until he doesn't. And
yeah,
when he no longer plays, we don't like mourn the loss. We move forward and reconfigure and figure out what we're going to do next. And
right,
I both need to feel bad that you're no longer going to be with us and move on and solve for the next problem. But very few people have family experiences where that was a proactive thing,
right,
where they found joy in somebody. And I think, like going back to your joy thing, and this will be a hard standard for a lot of employers and a lot of managers. You need to be able to find joy in number one, your employees doing good with you, meaning they're not a
mhm,
threat. You need to be able to find as much joy in them moving on and finding success somewhere else. That's a
yeah,
super high bar. I'm so
right.
excited for the career move you're making. We're going to
Right,
be sad you're gone. It is going to cause us some pain. We're going
right,
to recover because we're mature business leaders and a
yeah,
mature business. We have plans for this.
right,
But that finding joy in all of the above, not the scarcity of like now we're screwed, not the like scarcity of and we won't be able to replace them, not
mhm,
the anger like this is a lack of loyalty
right,
because you made a decision that was better for you and your family. There's
right,
a lot of
mhm.
that I don't know that a lot of managers are finding joy at work. So how would their employees?
Yeah, yeah,
So here's a
we
big
have
question I'd love to hear about. If if you believe, because I'm kind of the same as you, like I believe that there wasn't a lot of indexing on joy at work in the like 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right? That's not where it came from. Do you believe part of the challenge today is managers feeling, you could almost say jealous, but like, hey, I wasn't happy when I was in your job, so I don't know why we're making you happy now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard. But I think if you can reinforce the concepts, which is a difficult concept to understand the costs of turnover, right? Or we know our labor force is shrinking and it will continue to shrink for the next 30 years or more if people don't start having more kids or we have more immigration. And so we're going to have to do more with less, and there's just going to be a lower supply. So we've got to find ways to keep people and keep them motivated and keep them. I don't believe we can motivate other people, but we can create cultures and environments where people find their own motivation to be there. And managers have to get that. They have to understand that concept. They also, I think one of the difficulties in a lot of businesses is when you talked about trading players or, ending the contract of letting people go who aren't a part of that joy powered culture and are dragging other people down or not making space for others. And we need to move people off the bus, right? To make space for people who are.
Yeah, I think we have a crisis of leadership,
Hmm.
and I believe it's going to get more difficult with AI coming into the space.
Hmm.
And if you think you have a crisis of leadership at your company, it most likely stems starting number one from a crisis of empathy.
Hmm.
Like, do I have empathy for somebody else who isn't like me, who didn't come from my upbringing, who, like, that whole concept of like, your life should be hard in this role because when I was in that role, my life was hard. That's not empathy.
Right,
That what you should be saying instead, not, and it comes from this weird, like, well, if we make it too easy, you're going to be soft kind of BS. But it should
right.
be, what environment would I create that I wish I'd had when I was there?
Yes,
Not the what environment should I create to make sure they had to do what I did.
right.
Because this, like, recursive, like, we need the same crap that we dealt with, or somehow it's a I'm jealous of their environment they had and I wish I had it, instead of I'm moving forward and creating the environment I wish I'd had. Those are
Yes.
two very different things, and one is heavily empathetic and focused on the team, and one is heavily internalized and focused on you as the new culture makes me the victim of my old culture.
Hmm. Hmm.
That never works.
Right, right. I have a sister who's a doctor, and I've asked her many times over the years, like, why are residents and interns and fellows and many doctors, why do they have to work so many hours? And her answer every time is because their bosses did. You know, they feel like they can't be good doctors unless they were trained like they were to be good doctors.
We have a bias towards our experience.
Yeah,
Why do
yeah,
so many people in jobs like, say, HR need a college degree?
yeah,
I don't believe it's what you learned in college.
right.
I believe it's because your boss has a college degree and therefore has a bias towards somebody with that shared experience. Partly, I think most of it is subconscious.
Hmm.
Because what if somebody without a college degree is as good or better than me? It means, why did I go to college? Going
Right.
back to, why did I go through all that pain? I shouldn't enable somebody to not do the pain.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's a lot of that. But I do think if you're a leader, like that empathy thing. So back at Applicant Pro, I do believe you can motivate. I don't believe you can motivate everybody. I do believe that if you have empathy for them and understand both, not just their strengths, we in the marketing world we call this, it's the jobs to be done theory. And so there's a roadmap for it called the customer value. I think it's a customer value canvas. So you put your customer on one side and you say what are their goals, what are their wants and desires, and what are their pains, right? What do they hate and what do they love? And then on your side is your product. And your product needs to amplify their gains and alleviate
Yeah.
their pains, right?
Yeah.
Really simple kind of core concept. And you're saying the customer's hiring me to do this job. And if you're a leader, and this could say as a company from a culture standpoint, all the way down to a team, what what does this employee want? What are their pains that they wish they didn't have? And how as I as a leader creating an environment can create an environment that alleviates those pains and amplifies the gains. Like it's really not this hard concept, but it requires
Right.
number one, you accepting that as your job. It's my
Mhm.
job to create an environment where people feel safe, sure, where people feel inspired, totally, where people feel rewarded. But I think
Right.
on the far side, like seen, and especially if we go back to most of, like, I know a lot of your clients and a lot of people you work with are working females and probably working moms. Like, if you want to know the number one trick to like a working mom environment, it's this one little hack: pay for their house cleaning.
No.
Pay for their house cleaning. When I left Applicant Pro, we were dropping $500,000 a year on house cleaning. Okay.
Oh, I
Pay
love
for their house cleaning. It cost me 50 cents per hour worked. So it was the same as a 50 cent per hour raise. But every single month, I think it was 100 or $125 per month that they got allocated for their house cleaning bonus. Um,
right.
and I took the customer value canvas and I spent like 6 months at trade shows and at just random times just kind of quizzing my employees because I had a strong like Mormon mom workforce and a non-Mormon mom workforce. And I was seeing these differences of like how they were brought up and what their mom's life looked like. And some of them, I knew how much money they were making. And I knew I had people making like close to six figures that had started with me at 15 bucks an hour. I'm like, some of you guys have house cleaners and some don't. What's this about? Like, why is that? Why do some of you? Because you clearly shouldn't be cleaning your house. And the number one mom prop guilt was I go home after work and I still have to clean the house. I want to spend time with my kids, not yelling at them about picking up. And so I worked
Right.
this kind of strategy back and forth and I identified like, oh, house cleaning, it's an interesting guilty pleasure. I
Mhm.
feel guilt if I pay for it, even though I know I should, as somebody who makes enough money to justify that. Because my mom will think bad of me, my neighbors will think bad of me, like society's built up this stigma against it. And yet I actually would be better off paying for a house cleaner that came and cleaned while I was at work so I could go home and be with my family. My family would be happier. I would be happier, all this stuff. And there was this weird kind of dynamic there, right? So we rolled out house cleaning and it was an earned benefit. Your manager set the rule and was basically like, hey, this month, in order to get your house cleaning, we have to do this thing. And it had to be in their power. Couldn't be like
Mhm.
close a certain number of deals. It had to be like turned on your Zoom camera for each meeting.
Yeah.
It had to
Yeah.
be, we mapped out a process. It had to be something. It was always the manager's wish list. Man, I wish that our team would do X. So you'd use that as the wish list.
Yes.
Um,
I love it.
Insanely motivating. And like for our male employees, their wives were at home going, so what do you have to do this month to earn your house cleaning bonus? Like, what's the thing? There's
Uh,
got to be something you got to do. Um,
right.
but I think if you take that as a good model and look at it, embedded in this will be these things, right? Like PTO for part-timers. Huge, huge thing. You're getting more and more people seeing it, but again, that same concept. If you're a part-timer, this is like a high school kid, right? No, what if it's a 40-something working mom? If she takes a day off to go to a kid's art thing, she doesn't get enough money to pay her power bill.
Mhm.
The PTO is a half day, it doesn't cost you. It's not unfair. But yeah,
Right.
a lot of those things are deeply like motivating. They're extremely inexpensive, but I think the big one being I see you. Like
Right.
I see you. I'm not a part-timer, I'm a full-timer, but I see you. I'm not a working mom, but I see this thing. Hey, I see that you're interested in X and most of your job is Y. Hey, here's a project that will let you do more X.
Yes.
Like, here's this
Yeah.
one off thing. Go, I see that you like playing with AI. Hey, do you want to mess with this project on top of what you normally do? Like, I see those things. But if you're not having one-on-ones, or if one-on-ones are purely not about the person, not about their strengths, not about their priorities, not about what they like, very much like, are there problems at work? Cool, here's the solution. Do you have questions for me? No, good, go back to work.
Yeah.
Like our default one-on-one that is very work related, not personal.
Right.
I don't understand how you have the knowledge or the context to create that environment.
Hmm. That's right. You have to talk to people. You have to understand them and what drives them. And
How does that work for more introverted leaders? Because that's probably a challenge too, right?
well, I think you can be, introverts don't necessarily not want to talk to people. They just might be drained if they're talking to a lot of people at one time. But if they understand that is important to people of knowing who they are, whether it's knowing their priorities or knowing what motivates them or knowing what their strengths are, they can still have conversations with people, right? And get that information from them.
If an employee had a like mostly, we'll call them like bad managers, dictator managers, right?
Yes.
Old school, like do your job, don't complain. I'm not here to make you happy. How do they switch their own? Because they're gonna pattern that when they become a manager, right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
do how do you help? Like, how do you kind of guide leaders and managers to make that switch? Because it's not, it has to be a choice.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I think it's about having those conversations and not just that dictating what has to be done or dictating how it gets done or dictating exactly the process of what gets done, but having conversations. Now they can set parameters or I need you to get this done in a certain period of time. Doesn't mean you can go out and do whatever you want to get this accomplished. But and some of those can be done at the team level too. We have to maximize that time as a team, but at some point to get to the individual level to see them as you said. I think we all want to be seen at some point.
Yeah, you know what's surprising about it is it costs like nothing.
Right.
That's
Right.
if you want the real dirty secret. Like
Yeah.
take employee referrals as a great example. We mess around with how much we pay out for employee referrals,
Yeah.
but the most valuable payback on employee referrals that actually drives it is just saying thank you in public for an employee referral. Costs $0.
Exactly. That is, it's funny you said that because I tell people, leaders that all the time is to just start using the words thank you. And maybe that's thank you for, writing this grant that got us $1 million, but it might also be thank you for showing up to work on time today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying 15 minutes later. Thank you for working here for the last 3 years, right? There's so many ways we could be saying thank you.
I think we're just so focused on moving forward with, I know for me, I'll tell you from like, this is an evolution of me as a leader. I was always so focused on the next problem. Okay, now we
Mhm.
got to solve this. Now we got to do this. Now we got to go in this direction. And so
Right.
most meetings, most situations, it'd be very hard to slow down and be like, wait a second, like what were our wins from this week? Hey, good
Yeah.
job. Good job. If you want a great movie to watch, it's Will Smith is a superhero in Hancock, and they're trying to teach him,
Oh,
tell everybody good job, like
right.
recognize all those. And so my team would use that on me all the time. Um, but that idea of like that isn't actually stopping or slowing down, it's actually setting up the next project. So like
Right.
stopping and unpacking a project of where did we go wrong will certainly help us learn for the next project, 100%. But just as important is going, hey, what did we do right? Hey, great work on that. Hey,
Yeah.
let's highlight somebody like Ryan did this. Show the team, show what you did, like show and tell and science projects. A lot of those things we did was partly to make sure everybody saw that we were innovating, and a huge part to highlight. It was a forcing function of
Yeah.
like highlighting somebody who did something awesome. is it's almost it's the hard thing to show the ROI on because it is very difficult.
Yeah.
But you
My
know it works because you see it.
Yes, yes. My favorite quote ever, which was said by Donald Clifton, who was the founder of the Clifton Strengths or Strengths
Mhm.
Finder movement, said, "What would happen if we focused on what people do right, including ourselves, by the way, versus fixating on what others do wrong?" And thinking about even at the end of every day, if you ask yourself, what did I do right today? What did I do well today? And how can I do more of that tomorrow? Now, it's okay to also think, what mistakes did I made and how can I learn from them? But our tendency is to beat ourselves up and to beat others up on what went wrong and not focusing on what went right.
So why do you think that's our tendency?
I don't know. I think there's some society pressure, even on social media or even, just with some of the news stories we've heard recently of some tragedies and natural disasters, that I feel like on the news we're looking for someone to blame, right? Sometimes terrible things happen, and but that doesn't, and let's learn from those, but it doesn't have to be all about pointing fingers at other people too. Things
Yeah.
happen.
Like think about this one little like psychological thing. When we were in elementary school, that's when we started getting graded. The
Yeah,
teacher could have used a green pen and circled all the right answers, added them up, and got to 90%.
100%.
Instead, the teacher
Yeah,
used a red pen, checked off all the wrong ones, and subtracted from it. And that
yeah,
seems super stupid, but it literally set the drumbeat for everything we do today.
yeah,
Identify
yeah,
what we did wrong and point it out, because clearly, if I don't tell you, you
yeah,
won't improve it.
right.
And while that is that people will say, yes, and it works, and you're like, yeah, it works because it's the only way you've done it, and you've
Yeah,
never tried the opposite way. But what if grading the opposite way would have inspired more kids to try harder?
yeah, yeah,
Possible. And I
right.
think you could probably think through the problem of what inspires me more, being told good job, so I lean into that, a carrot, or being
Mhm.
told bad job, a stick.
Yeah,
And in a lot of organizations, we don't trust that carrots will work. So we feel like the stick ensures a bare minimum of performance.
right, right.
And yet carrots are wildly effective. And if it doesn't work, if you have people that have to be beat by a stick, maybe you shouldn't have them at your org. I
Right?
would assume like what you see in organizations of bringing joy, like heavy carrots and transparency of I know what was expected and I know when I'm winning and losing brings up this culture of people that feel inspired to do better. Surprisingly enough, the sticks can stay in the closet.
Hmm.
But there's, I would assume, with the people you work, a big fear of, yeah, but if we don't bring out the sticks, these people are going to go for a free ride without
Right,
trusting that, well, then weed them out
right,
and your team will weed them out. And why are you beating your best people because you need to beat your worst people?
right, right. And yet we have this fear of beating our worst people, I think. I mean, those are harsh words, right? But sometimes it's time for people to move on, or they're not the right people in our organization. That's and my I always laugh when I tell people in my first book called Joy Powered, I have a whole chapter on letting people go, because I think we don't do that enough when people are not adding to our sense of joy, or they're struggling and nobody knows what to do about it. So,
Why do you think we struggle with that so much?
well, I do think maybe the nature of the majority of people is we don't want to hurt people, or we don't want to think about someone not having a job, or we think about all the ways it might be difficult for them. What we don't, going back to my quote, what we don't think about them is how they might be more successful somewhere else or in a different role. Sometimes we're just not in the right culture
Hmm.
for what we need. And the first time I fired someone, I saw her, and I was like 29, and she was probably 50. And I saw her in the mall a few weeks later, and I saw her coming at me, and I literally was afraid she might come up and hit me or be angry or yell at me. And she walked up to me and hugged me. And she said, "Thank you so much." And I was like, "What for?" And she said, "I found a new position that is so much a better fit. I was miserable in that role." And that is always, not everyone you let go is going to come back and hug you, but that has always made me feel more confident in steering people to, in whatever way that happens, hopefully in a kind, supporting way, that people can find things that are better fit for them as well too. So
Yeah, and I think there's probably a couple questions that yeah, I think there's a couple questions that I always use. And so if you want to figure out how to make this easier, like step number one is like, I have a rule that I don't want to fire somebody who's surprised by it. And so like
right.
if a manager's complaining about an employee and saying we want to let this person go, I always ask that one question, are they going to be surprised that they're
Yeah,
failing? And that
yeah,
usually goes, okay, cool. Well, how can we make sure they're not?
yeah,
Well, are they clear about what success looks like? Are there measurables in place? Do they know they're not measuring up? Do they know that they are failing? Okay, cool. Then it won't be a surprise when you let them go. And I think the secondary question that people need to be asking is like, who is being harmed by them staying? And do we care
mm,
about them?
yes,
Because that one will instantly be like, look, my other five people on this team are picking up the slack because of this person, and they're losing faith in me as
yeah,
their leader because I allow it. And they're assuming that this is wrong, which means inside of their heart, they're going, why should I do awesome when doing not awesome is apparently okay?
exactly.
And those two questions will change your mindset immediately to go, okay, I care more about my top people who are doing well than I care about this person because they're the ones that are staying and performing and this person isn't. And so then I need to jump to question number two, which is, will this person be surprised? And how can I make sure they're not? Okay, we
Yeah,
might need to take a couple more weeks. Let's put together and that doesn't mean performance improvement plan. That comes
right,
later and has all kinds of negative stigma with it. It is,
right,
have we given clarity? Is there transparency and accountability? Is there a scorecard and a scoreboard? Do they know what they're supposed to do? And they're just choosing not to do it.
yeah,
Are they naive? They don't know any better, or are they evil? They're choosing to not do it because we
mhm,
tend to index on the like they're choosing, they're lazy, they aren't good at it, whatever. And probably half of people would change if there was clarity and transparency and then they would ask questions and solve for it. But yeah, those two things like for me 100% like especially cuz I think I'd manage 3 people ever, and then I started my company and now I'm managing like 200, 250 people, right? And I'm like, I don't know how to fire these people. And they're all moms and I feel bad and like all that stuff. But recognizing that you're causing harm to your core top performers by allowing it, you're causing harm to your reputation with them, your relationship to them, their trust in you as a
right,
leader is
right,
degrading.
right,
And
right.
most likely afterwards, you're going to have this big, and your whole
Yeah.
team's gonna be like, it's about time.
Yeah,
Like
and
we are,
you really risk losing your high performers if you don't do something about the low performers. So,
ooh, that one's yeah. I think so. Let's talk about AI just for a minute as we close up here. Like, how do you see AI changing all of these dynamics?
yeah. Well, I view AI as a way to help us be more creative, not to take our creativity away, as some people think. I also look at it as a way to make our lives and our jobs simpler, which I think we're going to need because we're going to have less people in the workforce. So we need to use that creativity to create processes and um, do things for us that'll make it easier. So I think there's a lot of fear about it, or the biggest conversation is, will I be replaced? Well, not if you uh, join in, right? Learn it, help it. And, it's surprising, I think, to me, how many, some younger people that aren't wrapping their arms around it, and some older people who are. So I don't think it's a generational thing. I mean, there's some of that, but jump in and learn it and try it. And my goal is to find a new way to use it every week. So that, and I ask that of my team does a pulse survey every week, and I ask the question, how did you use AI this week? Because I want them to be thinking about how they can do it. So,
Yeah, I think right now I think the we're using AI as indexing at like 70-80%, which is bogus. Like literally, like using it means one person in an org of 500 is using it, and
right.
nobody wants to say out loud that they're not, because clearly that means we're falling behind, right? So whatever data you're hearing about the usage of AI, just assume that it's
Yeah.
overstated, and you're assuming it's used everywhere, and they're killing it at it. And that's number two. The actual and it's working.
Yeah.
Working and causing positive is sub 20%.
Hmm.
80% say they're using, 20% say it's paying off. That's
Good.
a problem, right? In this
Yeah.
gap area. And
Yeah.
if we think about, go back to that carrot and stick, if you're looking at your team going, I wish they used AI right now, saying, if not, they'll be left behind, that is a stick. That's a
Yeah.
threat. You're using fear to motivate them. Fear is, yes, it is a short term potential motivator. It never works well long term.
Hmm.
Introducing fear into your team, your culture, is a last ditch effort of companies that have supposedly tried everything else. You need to introduce a carrot,
Right.
not a stick. And a carrot in AI means exactly what you just said. Hey, we need to surface it. How did you use it this week? Show
Hmm.
us. Show us
Yeah.
the prompt you use. One problem with AI is it's very much a personal thing, meaning my ChatGPT is mine, your ChatGPT is yours. You can't
Yeah.
see how I'm using it, and I can't see how you're using it. Therefore, I assume the way I'm using it is how it's supposed to be used.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is dead on. I would just take it a step further of like show and tell. Like show us how you used it this week. Make a
Yeah.
video for
I
what
love
you used it on. The other thing to do is you need to limit some of the risk. And so, like, my first question in every single roundtable and speaking session is always, what's the weirdest thing? What's the quirkiest thing? What's the weirdest personal thing you used it for this week? Because it opens up the conversation to be like, oh, this is low risk. Oh, this week I used it to write a letter from my mom to me for my birthday. Oh,
it.
weird. Interesting. How did you do that? And that's your
Yeah.
follow up. Cool. How did you do that? Well, I did this and this and this and this. Awesome. If every org just started with that. Now, there's one real big problem with it is that I believe leaders are supposed to go first, and the average leader is using it less than their team.
Mm.
So if you say that that's the best adoption I've seen is this exact path, like 100% this exact path of like, you need to explain what the future will be like. Hey, look, like, what's my motivation to do it? I'm going to be able to do more in less time, and then you're going to give me more work to do, but pay me the same. Okay,
Yeah.
that's not a positive motivator. So you
Right.
better figure out your like, and so we're going to shrink to a 4-day work week.
Yeah.
And so half the improvement goes to me, half goes to you. So I'm going to give you a raise.
Mhm.
So, whatever that is. Number two is like put guardrails, not strict policy. Like we don't use it for X, Y, and Z because here's the risk. These are adults. Treat them like adults. Here's the
Right.
risks. Here's how we mitigate them. Here's the benefits. We always use it for this. Here's the gray area. Here's how we're gonna talk about this. Like you got to create an open environment for it. But the leader's not going first. Like this is the first time since maybe the internet and email that we had a flattening of knowledge on using something fundamental. Like I
Yes.
remember this assessment company. I went in as they were going to resell our product, potentially buy me out. A big multi-million-dollar assessment company, and the CEO and CF or the CEO and COO had their emails printed out by their assistant, and they would read them and write up what they wanted, and that person would reply. And they're a tech company, and I'm building software, and I
Right.
immediately lost all respect. I was like, okay, whatever these guys say, like they're full of crap.
Right.
And
Right.
I think if you told your leaders like, hey, the number one thing you got to do is like show and tell. You have to go first. Show them your ChatGPT. Everybody would instantly freak out.
Yeah.
And you're like, so you expect them to do something you're not doing.
Yeah.
You expect them to respect you of leading them towards AI when you're not doing it.
Right.
And we're searching for these tools to buy when what we should be doing is just using ChatGPT or Claude or
Mhm.
Grok and saying, hey, look, this week I used it for X. But that I believe, like, if you want to give people the ability to move up and over and around, AI is hugely has huge potential for it.
Oh,
But not
sure.
if you force it on them, not if you stick them with it and say, you better do this or you'll get fired.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's yeah, we're entering a time where I'm afraid that your book's going to be more relevant and more difficult than ever to implement.
That's truth.
Yeah,
Truth.
yeah, I love the way that you're using it. So yeah, if you're listening to this episode, so Jody's got a new book out. You can find it on Amazon. Joy at Work, right?
July 29th,
Right.
it'll be on Amazon. Yeah.
Wow, JoDee just dropped some serious wisdom about transforming workplace culture in the age of AI. Let me recap the three biggest takeaways. First, joy at work isn't about ping pong tables and free pizza. It's about people spending their days using their strengths and feeling genuinely recognized for their contributions. Second, if you want your team to embrace AI, stop using fear as motivation and start with show and tell. Leaders need to go first. And third, the cost of keeping your worst performers is actually harming your best people and destroying your credibility as a leader. JoDee Curtis is doing incredible work helping organizations build cultures where people thrive. You can find her new book, Joy at Work When Women Lead, on Amazon starting July 29th and connect with her team at purpleinklc.com. If today's conversation sparked some ideas about your own workplace culture or AI strategy, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below, hit that subscribe button, and share this episode with a leader who needs to hear JoDee's message. And hey, if you're curious about how we use AI to transform conversations like this into marketing content, lead magnets, and team training materials, check out AI4Sales.io. We're helping organizations turn their expertise into scalable systems that actually work.